Welcome back to another episode of Door-to-Door Real Estate. My name is Jeremy Davis. Today I'm your host. I appreciate that you came back, that you wanted to learn. If you watched my other videos, this is a very classroom-oriented style of videos where you and I will learn together, and we'll talk about some of the most important topics when it comes to real estate, door-to-door, and selling at a very high level. If you want any other information, check out the shorts, my Instagram page at Door-to-Door Realtor. Check out my business partner, Dwayne Richens, his channel. Our goal is to provide as much value as we can to help you explode your career. Whether you're a new realtor, whether you're doing 10, 15, 20 deals and you want to do 50, or you're doing 50, 60, 70 and you want to push to 100, or if you're doing 100 and you need more arrows in your quiver to go door to door. So buckle up. Today we're going to talk about mindset. Why in the world are realtors dropping out left and right? Why is it that in your first 2 years, you have 90+% of realtors that don't make it? Honestly, I've sold all over the nation for 15 years. I've trained hundreds, maybe thousands of sales reps. And in these last 3 years, I've traveled, I've trained multiple high producing door-to-door real estate agents. And honestly, it just comes back to what's right here, your mind. An agent's ability to control the mind, to have habits and rituals in place to make sure this is sharp as a tack will determine whether or not you do a lot of success or a lot of volume. So take out a pad of paper and a pen. We're gonna dive into mindset, how to develop one, why it's important, and maybe some tips and tricks that you can implement to have a sharper mindset. Number one, the power of mindset. Let me use an example. I didn't come that prepared, but let me use an example of a story that's called The Flea in the Jar. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. It's a metaphor for the limitations that we put on ourselves that prevent us from succeeding. The story is really simple. I've heard it 1,000 times. You have a jar, it's full of fleas, and these fleas are jumping all over the place. If you take off the lid initially, they're jumping in and out. They recognize that they can leave and they do that. You take the lid, you then put that on as a limitation or as a barrier. The fleas start to bounce up and down. They realize they can't get out, and so they stop jumping after a while and they stay dormant at the bottom. What's crazy with this story is, let's say I go take off take off the lid, those fleas you would think would start jumping out and leaving because now there's an exit point. But because they've been so trained that they can't leave because of the lid, they now stay at the bottom. That is wild. But what happens is in our life, there are limitations that we put on our mindset. Those limitations then become part of our character and part of our view on the world. And we establish like these really strong barriers that prevent us from succeeding. So not only do you have to recognize what those are, but you have to learn how to overcome them. One of my favorite books is David Goggins' Can't Touch This or Can't Hurt Me. And he talks about the idea of the mirror. If you were to stand in front of a mirror, completely undressed, and just be authentic with yourself. How do I see the world? How do I see real estate? What's preventing me from succeeding? What limitations do I have? The hardest part is to identify what those limitations are. That could come from childhood, past leaders, groups you've been in. There's years of limitations that have been established into you without you realizing. So you need to take time and you need to jot those down and then come up with a plan to overcome them. Take off the lid, learn to jump again, and get out of that jar. So that is number one. Number two is facing challenges. Facing challenges when it comes to developing a strong mindset. Most athletes or top producers, they've hit thousands of roadblocks along the way. When I first got into real estate, I sold 25 right out of the gate my first 6 months. Found out my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And that next calendar year, I would drive down to be with him. I'd drive back and work. I'd drive down to be with him and drive back to work. It's not what I had planned the previous October, November, December for that year. But that calendar year, I still sold 75 deals, working a third of the year. How did I do that? Well, you have to realize part of your journey in real estate or in sales in general, you're going to hit speed bumps. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just part of the experience. Any top athlete is going to tell you the exact same. Along the path, you're going to hit speed bumps. But the difference of the top performers is when they hit that bump and they're on the bottom, they're going to learn and analyze it, adjust, and go again. They're going to constantly be doing that. So in real estate, you have to plan for there to be speed bumps. In your schedule, make sure that you allow or put in time that allows for flexibility. If your schedule is too rigid, if your plans are too rigid, you're not going to allow for life to happen in your plans. So then a speed bump will happen, it'll throw you off, and then that's when you decline. That's why most realtors come Q4, they're going to then tank, go on vacations, check out, because they're not going to hit their goals. It's important that you realize that and you put it into your schedule. Number 3, goal setting. This is so crucial when it comes to performing at the highest level in real estate. One of the examples I want to talk about is the Harvard study that was done. It's a well-known study on goal setting. So they did this study back in 1953. They did a study on goal setting, which has since been quoted and referenced in countless articles and books. I'm sure you've heard of this as well. The study found that people who wrote down their goals were more likely to achieve them than those who didn't. This became known as the Harvard study on goals. So essentially, this is kind of what happened. Back in 1953, the graduating class of the Harvard MBA students were asked whether or not they write down their goals or that they had goals in general. And it's crazy. These were their responses. 3%, 84% did not have goals at all. And this is the Harvard MBA class, graduating class of that year. So what they did in this study is they followed them for the next 10 years, and it was discovered that the 13% who had non-written goals earned on average twice as much as the 84% who didn't have goals at all. The 3% who had written their goals outperformed everyone altogether, hands down, earning 10 times as much as the other 97% combined. That's crazy to me. Just the simple act of having some type of vision board journal where you write down your goals. Just that, you'll outperform 10 times most realtors in your industry. Now, I don't know how it correlates exactly, but the idea is that you're going to outperform and outpace people simply by just writing down your goals. So most of my coaching clients, I coach them on this idea, and in their journal, in their morning Miracle Morning Savers program that comes from the book Miracle Morning, I'm gonna have them write down their top 10 goals every single day. Those top 10 goals need to be on the forefront of your mind. Otherwise, just like this study, you're gonna forget them. So again, the book is called Miracle Morning. They have a program called Savers, and every morning you're gonna sit in silence, you're gonna work on your affirmations, you're gonna visualize, you're gonna exercise, read, and then you're gonna scribe. Part of the scribing is that you're going to write down your top 10 goals. Right when you wake up, before you go to the gym, get a piece of paper, do it in a journal, write down your top 10 goals. And just by that act, it'll put you in the top class of performers, of realtors in your market. The next thing I want to talk about is continuous learning. Are you learning continuously? Are you reading hundreds of books? Are you reading one book a week? Are you reading one book a month? I was reading a couple years ago this book, The Psychology of Sales, by Brian Tracy. And he talked about how the average American, you and I, or if you're not from America and you're watching this, wherever you're at, reads less than one book a year. Less than one book a year. And that's just, those are the statistics. That's how it works. The average CEO of a Fortune 500 company reads 52. So again, simple practices that we can implement that will put us in the top percentile of realtors. It's reading. It's simply going to the store, picking up a book, setting the goal to read a little bit every day, and just that act will make you sharper, more professional, and it'll expand your mind. Again, with mindset, it'll make your mind sharp as well. For example, going back to resilience and mindset and developing that. This book is one of my favorite books on this topic. It's called 3 Feet from Gold, and it's by the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Everyone knows the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Napoleon Hill. Well, 100 years later, this book was written, and it's about a kid that isn't having the greatest success in his life, and he stumbles into a businessman. And that businessman introduces him to different people that were 3 feet from gold. And he learns why and how they didn't give up. And he starts to develop this strong mindset and learn these habits and skills from all these people. And then he gets better, sharper, and more professionally connected as he does this. Another great book I just finished is The Compound Effect. This book by Darren Hardy, who's the author of Success Magazine, talks about the importance of daily little tiny activities that if you add up over time, will compound into bigger results. Here's another one, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This was written by Stephen Covey, who has recently passed. He talks about different habits of highly effective people. This is a great one. Another one, this book by Gary Vee called Jab, 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 Right Hook was recommended to me by my brother. I went and bought it, read it, implemented its practices, and it just made me a little bit sharper when it came to social media. So how many books are you reading and how often are you reading? Now, they don't have to be self-help type books. If they are, great. If they're not, great. But find what works best for you. Just make sure that you're reading frequently over time, okay? Next one, when it comes to networking and building relationships, there's no better example of this to me than Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is one of the greatest connector of people that I've ever met. I'm actually in his coaching program and have been for years. It's so important when it comes to mindset that you have a network of people that allow you to stay sharp. And when you're struggling, can lift you up. It's so important. There's a great phrase that I've used over the last 10, 15 years of my life, that a high tide in the ocean will raise all ships. So a simple practice is to go meet with lenders, realtors, family, people in your community, title work every day on your calendar. Never eat alone. Go meet with someone and have lunch with them for 45 minutes once a day. Network yourself and just ask, how can I provide value to this person? How can I bless their lives? There's a great book called Give and Take, and it talks about how if you give more than you take, if you reach out your hand more than you ask, then the universe will give that back to you tenfold. So make sure that you have a network and that you're building relationships, so those people that you're surrounded with can make sure that your mind is sharp. Everyone's always heard of you're the average of the 5 people you hang around, but why not be deliberate on who you put in that circle? Put someone that's a good father or a good mother. Put someone that's a good spouse. Put someone that's a good realtor. Put someone that's athletically trying to push themselves. Be very selective of who you put in your circle, and then figure out how to bless their lives, and your mind will always stay sharp. When I lost my dad, I had certain people that were reaching out to me and that took me out. They realized I was down here and it was really hard. And they were constantly trying to pull me up, Make sure that mind was sharp. Bring me to the gym, bring me to basketball, check in with me, come over. You need people like that in your network. If you don't have any of them, reach out to me. I am more than happy to be one of your cheerleaders in your circle. It would be an absolute honor. Make sure that you're networking and connecting as much as you can. Okay, the next one, resilience. High achievers aren't deferred by setbacks. They use them as springboards. Going back to this book, 3 Feet from Gold, everybody is always so close. We're 3 feet from gold. We've all seen the picture of the 2 guys that are using the sledgehammers to get through the rocks, and one gives up and the other one is right there. The one that gives up, it's literally 3 feet from all these diamonds. And that's how it works. You cannot give up. So again, what are some practices? I want you to come to this channel and learn very specific practices so you can go implement them and get sharper on the topics we cover. So what is one topic that you can implement? And one of them is do hard things. If you don't ever do hard things and something hard happens in your job, it's gonna throw you off because you're not used to it. But for example, go take a cold shower every day. Want to talk about hard? I have to pump myself up every day before the gym to get in that cold shower. But something very hard, it teaches me that I do hard things. That's who I am, and I'm not worried about them. That's one thing. Another thing, when I'm at the gym, I use a wall ball and I throw it up for wall balls, and I count after my mind tells me to stop. Usually I get into like the high 20s, and then I'm like, I should quit. Right then, when those come in, now I start counting and I try to double whatever number I got to. That's something hard. Another thing is knocking doors. That's really hard. And what about athletically? Are you trying to do a competition? Are you trying to run a race? Make sure you're implementing specific things that will push you mentally so that when something hard comes on your plate, you can breathe, you're trained to go through this, and it doesn't phase you. My kids, one thing I teach them is the breathing, like the 5-second breathing technique. So anytime they're scared to do something, I tell them, let's take 5 deep breaths. Let's count to 5. Thank you, Mel Robbins, for your book. And then let's move forward. So with them, I'll hold their chest and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they do it. And my kids, they're incredible. They'll do really hard things. And when they struggle, their brothers and sisters will come and help them. If you have that community and you're constantly doing hard things, you're reading books, you're staying sharp as a tack, you will be able to confront the difficulties of not only life, but real estate. Again, remember that 80% of realtors fall out or drop. Or I think it's 90%. 90% of realtors fall out or drop. Why? Because this job is 80% mindset and 20% skill set. Whatever percentages you want to do, mindset's up here and the skill set's down here. You can be sharp as a tack, but be the laziest, most distracted person that is struggling, and it won't matter your skill set. We see this in the NBA of professional sports all the time. There are people that are so talented, yet their mindset is just not there and they just kind of die out. But if the mindset's there and they work really hard, they're the first one to practice, first one to leave, or last one to leave, then they develop those skills and they do really well. So as we wrap this video up, what did we talk about today? Mindset. Why is it important? How to develop it? Specific things that you can do. What did you learn? Share in the comments, reach out to me. My number is 702-525-5766. You can always get a hold of me. I will always pick up your call. If I don't, which I never do, then let's chat, because I will always get back to you. Mindset can shape the journey in real estate. It can create the reality that you want to. If we shape or we change the viewpoint, the meaning we give to experiences, then we can almost forge the reality that we want. We can create it spiritually and then physically. Make sure that if you found this video interesting, share it with others that are struggling. I would love to help anyone develop a sharp mindset. Make sure you keep achieving and aspiring to do better, to train, and sharpen your saw. If you found this video interesting, like I said, please share, leave in your comments any questions you might have. And again, if you are struggling or you have any questions, reach out to me. Most of our coaching clients, the first couple meetings that we have together are on mindset, vision boards, and your why. Then we dive into the skills. The skills don't matter if you don't have everything else. Again, thanks for coming. Hope you took a ton of notes. I sure did. Look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.